There we go. Okay, fun. So let me start out with sharing my screen. I have all my notes. I always have to make notes, you guys, for so I remember to hit record and do all the things I need to do. Nicole, you can't hear me. Uh-oh. Everyone else said, or someone else said they could hear me. You can still hear me? Okay, we're getting head nods. Okay, perfect. Might be you, Nicole. I don't know how to fix that on my end. Hopefully it will just, maybe it's an internet blip too. That could be. So hopefully she'll be able to hear us soon. Hear me. But I'm going to get started then. I'm going to, as soon as I share my screen, it gets tough for me to see the chat. So just so you know, so if you have a question, you can certainly pop it in the chat. And then at the end, I'll be able to look at that again. So just so you know. Okay, looks like she left. So hopefully when she comes back in, she'll be able to see that. Oh, the wonders of technology, right? Okay, so you should be seeing my screen now. And there we go. Let me get this up and running. Okay. So here we go. Welcome to the menopausal middle. And tonight we're going to talk all about how to empower you to embrace change and feel confident with making decisions about your hormonal health. So this is going to be a very fun topic. I know lots of people have questions about hormonal health and just going into these different changes that our bodies go through that are not very well talked about. So we are digging in today. So if you don't know me, my name is Lindsay. I am a holistic nutritionist and health coach. I work 100% virtually, and I focus mainly on helping busy women with embarrassing digestive issues resolve them for good so they never ever have to think about them again. Why am I talking about hormonal health? You're going to see in just a few minutes, okay? The two are very, very closely related, and this is a great topic to dig into. So if you were at the class about a month ago at Jazzercise, I was there talking for the intro to movement class. So you might have met me there. So if you did, it's great to see you again. And I also helped Nicole do the weight loss and wellness challenge a couple of years back. So if it kind of sounds familiar, that's why you might kind of know who I am. So good to see you again. If we're meeting for the first time, certainly nice to meet you. So why am I qualified to talk to you? I like to get this kind of out of the way to set the stage for what this is. And I have a master's degree in holistic nutrition. I'm a certified gut health practitioner. I'm a certified plant-based chef, not the restauranty kind, the kind that works on recipe development kind of behind the scenes. Don't put me in an industrial kitchen. I won't know what to do. I am a certified essential oil coach, and I have graduate certificates in herbalism, anatomy and physiology, wellness coaching, and complementary and alternative medicine. Before I started my own business, my virtual coaching practice in May of 2020, I worked for 7 years as an employment consultant for people with disabilities. So through my own pretty substantial kind of digestive health journey, I ended up going to grad school to actually try to solve my problems because I wasn't getting the answers that I needed, and I unfortunately still didn't through grad school, but I did learn a lot about the body and how it worked. So I was able to kind of piece together things. And that's really what I help my clients do. I use my own experience, but now what I've learned through working with hundreds of people, women mostly, and developing a 3-step process that I take my clients through. So whether you're wanting help with hormonal balances or strictly gut issues, weight loss, anything like that, I look at it through the lens of gut health. So it's kind of a different approach. So tonight we are going to be talking about that transition period from going through the kind of the perimenopause stage through actually menopause and what that means and what symptoms are associated with it. I've I received some questions from you guys, so we'll address those at the end. I've worked some of them kind of into the presentation as well. So you'll see that kind of talked about as well. Okay, so quick medical disclaimer. I'm not a doctor. This is not medical advice. I'm not your nutritionist as of now. This is strictly for educational purposes, so don't use this to diagnose or treat any illness or condition. Okay, so let's dig in. We're ready, right? We're excited, we're pumped. We have questions about hormones, so let's get to it. Menopause is simply a time in our lives when our hormones once again change quite a bit. So, as you're transitioning into, kind of your teen years and everything, we're talking about periods, we're talking about all that fun stuff. But then we're kind of left, at the other end of that reproductive window of wondering what in the world is happening. And it seems to be everything all over the place, symptoms wise, but it also seems to be information is everywhere, right? And there's so much misinformation, and who do we trust, and what's normal, what's not, how do I know? So that's what I hope to clarify a little bit tonight, okay? And I do want to just be super, super clear that menopause is it's a normal part of life. It's that time of the reproductive years kind of coming to an end, which is perfectly natural. There's nothing wrong with that. Nothing has gone wrong. It doesn't mean you're slowing down. It doesn't mean you're past your prime or drying up or that you're irrelevant. Those are some really, really negative words that I hear a lot from women. And it's unfortunate, but that's what it's kind of that society kind of places on us. And that's unfortunate because that's just not true. Being a woman is not a symptom, and it's also not a disease. It's not something that needs to be solved. It's not something that needs to be fixed. Your body is just reacting in a very predictable way. But when we actually know what's happening, right? It's very predictable, but getting to that point can be a bit of a challenge. So if you're up for it, I would love to challenge you right now to claim your strength and authority, especially with those menopausal years. You've earned it. Reject all the noise about what menopause is supposed to look like or what it looked like for a friend or a neighbor or whoever, or you're reading in a book or you're seeing on social media. Forget about some of that stuff because that can be very sensationalized and it might not be true to what's happening with you. So that is my challenge for tonight. I hope you are up for it, and I hope we can kind of break some of that down tonight. So the first thing we need to talk about is going to be perimenopause. And again, this is kind of that natural process. It typically will occur between the mid 40s to mid 50s. But some women actually do begin experiencing symptoms of perimenopause as early as age 35. A lot of that has to do with genetics, but also the way that you live your life is playing a huge, huge role in it. So if you know anything about your mom or your grandma, her experience with this time, when did she have her last period? What symptoms did she experience? Things like that can actually really, really help. It's not a guarantee, but if grandma and mom both started experiencing symptoms, in their 30s, it's likely that you might too. However, lifestyle and diet are going to play a huge role in that, as you can see too. But I like to address the genetic factor with that as a starting point. So back to perimenopause. So everyone is going to experience this transition a little bit differently, but there are very real symptoms associated specifically with perimenopause that can indicate some imbalances in the body, which is actually a good thing because that's your body saying, hey, I need some help. There's something going on down there. So when we know that something is going on, then we can work to figure out what is happening in the first place. As we start to approach our 40s, It's really common to skip a couple of periods. And what that actually does is it can lower, we're going to get into a little bit of the hormone talk now. It's going to actually lower progesterone. And that actually can lead to a lot of common symptoms with perimenopause. The biggest one is probably sleep issues, but also night sweats, hot flashes can happen then, and inflammation in general. So that's when we start to get to those ages, mid-30s, 40s, and you're starting to wake up sweating and having these, new to you hot flashes, that can be a sign. And then we look, what is, like, how is that? How common is that? Let's slow it down. That's a very, very big cue. And a really important thing to note, inflammation in general is going to have a really big role in how we age, specifically as well for perimenopause and menopause. So we want to always be aware of inflammation and be thinking about how we can reduce it. This inflammation is going to start to pop its head in things like joint pain and weight gain, especially as we get older. We're going to talk about those things in a minute. So what we found, now that this topic is kind of being talked about more and there's more practitioners specializing in hormone health, is that the attitude that women have towards their bodies, as well as their symptoms in general, actually do have a huge impact on their experience. So if your mindset is kind of that negative, like, oh, this is so horrible, this is such a bad time, and all those things are going to beginning, that's going to be your experience. But flip that and you're embracing it and just learning from it and learning to love those things and support to, ease symptoms, that's going to be more of your experience. So there is a very, very strong mind-body connection here. So menopause. So we just talked a little bit about perimenopause. And I will say, if you're not, experiencing substantial symptoms or anything, you're just going to go about everything like normal. You're just focusing on general health, just thinking about aging and just really reducing inflammation. But if you are finding those symptoms to be kind of taking over your life, that's when it's a really good idea to bring in some extra support so that we can hopefully mitigate some of that by the time we end up with the menopause years. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully you're still with me. Just talked about perimenopause. So now moving into hormone or menopause. We just talked about with perimenopause, progesterone drops, which actually leads to an estrogen dominance. So it's kind of a seesaw effect. So when one hormone drops, another isn't necessarily going up, but it's tilting up. So if everything is kind of level, progesterone goes down, your estrogen level might stay the same, but it's higher than progesterone. So that's where it gets a little bit confusing. So think of it kind of like a teeter-totter. Everything is in balance. So again, further going into the perimenopause to menopause, we're going to start to see spotting in between periods, maybe sporadic or missed periods, and maybe even heavier periods. So really the whole gamut, right? It could be, I think the easiest way to look at it is just a change. Either it's missed, it's heavier, it's lighter. Then we know something's going on. As you're getting closer to those menopause, the actual menopause, estrogen is going to begin to drop as well. So you have progesterone going down, you have estrogen naturally going down. Menopause then officially starts when you've gone 12 months without an actual period. Okay, so that's the actual definition of menopause. We can't talk about this stuff without first knowing what a hormone is. So hormones are chemical messengers that your body uses to carry out a specific function or to kind of trigger a chain reaction of functions. They do a lot more than just the sex hormones, so just estrogen and testosterone. Those are mostly what, it's really common to think of that when you hear hormones. You think of estrogen and testosterone, but there's so many other hormones in your body, and they do things like regulate your heart rate and tell you that you're full. So the gut is actually the gatekeeper of most of these hormones. This is where that gut hormone connection comes in. Hormones are slower acting than their quick neurotransmitter cousins. Some actions from hormones can take several minutes, days, months, or even years to carry out. Neurotransmitters, on the other hand, happen instantly. So that's why lifestyle factors, what we eat, the way we live every day, has such a huge impact on hormones, because they're taking a little bit longer to happen. Hormones are needed for the body to function at optimal levels. And when they become out of whack, which is fairly easy in our world today, we experience these symptoms to varying degrees, I'll add, okay? I'm just checking my notes to make sure I said everything on that. Okay, cool. So let's dig into some of the symptoms. Now, this is where that checklist that I popped into the chat box is going to come in handy. And basically what that checklist is, it's what we're going to go through in the next 4 slides, but in more detail. So there's more things that you can look at. So what I would encourage you to do is print out that checklist, save it on your computer. And you might want to do it more than once, but you can just kind of go down the list and check off symptoms that you're finding, that you're experiencing. And they're grouped together. And if you are finding that you have a lot of symptoms in one category, that's a good indicator that that might be the hormone that's kind of out of balance, whether it's high or low. It's not diagnosing anything, but it gives your practitioner a really great place to start. And it gives you a really good place to start too, because it starts empowering you to talk about your health in a different way. So let's dig in. Starting with high estrogen. This is particularly estradiol. There's lots of different hormones in here, but we're talking particularly about the estradiol. So common symptoms, the most common symptoms will have heavy periods, menstrual migraines, mood swings, shortened menstrual cycles, so less than 21 days, fibroids, bloating, water retention, breast tenderness or cysts, and endometriosis. So those are some of the most common. Again, on your checklist, you have some more in there. And then on the other end of the spectrum, we have low estrogen. So we just talked about high estrogen. Now we're talking about low estrogen. And some of those common symptoms associated with low estrogen are going to be bone loss, either osteopenia or osteoporosis, depression, brain fog, memory problems, hot flashes and night sweats, low thyroid function, weight gain, joint pain, and sleep problems. Next up, we have low progesterone. Some common signs of that. We have water retention, long menstrual cycles, so greater than 35 days, irritability, anxiety, depression, fertility problems, miscarriage, insomnia, constipation, breast pain, and low libido. Then we get into testosterone, so high testosterone. So this, again, testosterone is that male sex hormone. So, there's a lot of these are kind of that, what you'll think of as like a stereotypical man, right? You start to kind of feel those that way and kind of feel that aggression side of you come out. And it again looks different on everyone depending on the levels, but testosterone definitely plays a role in women's health, and we just don't have as much of it. So ideally men, their levels will be up in the hundreds. Ours are much, much lower than that. But if it's too high for a woman, we're going to have some issues. But if it's too low as well, you're going to have issues as well. So common symptoms, we have acne, blood sugar problems, fertility problems, hair loss or thinning hair in unwanted places, oily skin or hair, lots to do with your hair in this one, reactivity, irritability, aggression, and anxiety and depression. On the other end of it, the low testosterone. So common symptoms might be bat wings or that fat on the back of your arms, decreased sense of well-being, depression, fatigue, muscle loss, muscle weakness, weight gain, low confidence, low motivation, and low libido. So those are the kind of the main ones to look at. Again, that checklist I gave you is going to, I'll pop it in again at the end. It's going to go into more detail with it, but that's a really great place to start. Other hormones that you'd want to probably look at, and depending on the practitioner, so if I'm looking at hormones with someone, I'm running a full, ideally gold standard would be like a full test on all of these hormones so that we get a very, very clear picture. Just measuring estrogen levels is not going to tell us very much. Just measuring testosterone is not going to tell us very much. We want to actually dig into it. So other hormones to look at will be cortisol, which has to do with stress and your adrenal function, thyroid hormones. There's lots going on with the thyroid that affects estrogen, progesterone, insulin and insulin resistance. We want to look at that. That's blood sugar regulation. And then sex binding hormone globulin. So this is one that's really, really overlooked, and it shouldn't be. What it does is it kind of, think of it like it's floating around your body and there's testosterone kind of floating around. It grabs that testosterone, the free testosterone, and it binds it up. It takes it for itself. So you don't have access to it. Your body can't use it. So it's bound up. That's the sex binding part. And that becomes a problem because, hey, you have testosterone in your body, but you don't have access to it. You can't use it. So we have to unbind it. And that's a really, I think it's really commonly overlooked by a lot of practitioners because it's not very well understood. But that's a big one. And that the easiest way to do that is going to be through supplements. And there's specific supplements that can help to unbind. And stress has a big, big role in that sex binding hormone globulin. So cortisol and this one are the two that are really playing a role with stress. Okay, so then I wanted to talk about 3 specific kind of symptoms that I've received some questions about and kind of what we can do for these specific things. And then we're going to get into the general recommendations for menopause and just hormone health in general, okay? Hopefully you're still with me. Hopefully that little breakdown of our hormones kind of made sense. It's very complicated, so hopefully I'm simplifying this enough and it actually does make some sense. Okay, so the first thing that I wanted to look at, increased joint pain. So this is really interesting, and I hear this from a lot of women, and kind of as you're getting older, you're having more joint pain. And that I would say that's fairly common, right? But why is it happening and what can we do about it? And this might be the menopausal knees, I've heard people say, and just having more knee pain. So it totally makes sense when we understand what's happening with our hormones. As we get older, naturally, muscle mass decreases. We lose an average of 3% muscle mass every decade, and we need to work to counteract that. So not just gain that back, but then put on more muscle mass. As we're losing muscle mass, muscle strength also decreases, right? It makes sense. We don't have as big of muscles, we don't have as much strength. Maybe you've experienced that. And what it's actually doing is it's putting more pressure on your joints. When you have more muscle, your muscle can absorb some of that impact. When there's less of it there, your joints have to do some of that. Another thing to really note is that estrogen in women will help to increase muscle mass. As we just talked about, as we're approaching menopause, estrogen levels drop. So it makes sense, right? We're having less muscle mass because of that estrogen change. Weight gain can also be a common side effect or symptom that we're going through with these hormonal imbalances. And of course, if we're gaining weight, if we have more weight on our bodies, it's putting more weight on those, or more stress, more weight on those joints. So pain can happen. Low estrogen, I just talked about, and then imbalances in the gut microbiome. A lot of inflammation comes from the gut. So if there's gut issues going on there, seemingly unrelated to how your knee's feeling, right? How your tummy feels is seemingly not related to how your knee feels. There is a connection. It's a very strong connection. So those are some possible causes. What to do about it? This is kind of a brief action plan. So a starting point. So you can screenshot this or take a picture of it if you want to, but to reduce joint pain, these are 6 things that I would highly, highly recommend. First one, get to a healthy weight. Second one, stretch. We do not stretch enough as it is. So if you are having any sort of pain, stretching should be a go-to. I did a workshop last week with a fitness coach, and she has her clients every time they get a notification on their phone, an email, a text, whatever, she has them either sit up straight, like fix your posture, or stand up and stretch. What an amazing reminder, right? Or set a reminder on your phone, top of the hour, get up, stretch a little bit. That's going to help reduce some of that pain. And then the next one, build and balance muscles. So like I said, we're reducing muscle mass. So we need to counteract that with strength training, but we also want to identify any weaknesses in the body. So a lot of times it's really common to be like quad dominant. So your quads will take over the front of your legs. Or if you're doing arm work, your biceps take over. They're bigger muscles, so they kind of take over. And then the other muscles that counteract that, so your triceps or your hamstrings, might get tight or underdeveloped. Or maybe you have an injury on one side of the body, so you compensate. That can cause a weakness. We just want to balance that out. That will help to reduce some joint pain. Next one, less cardio. So cardio is really great for lubricating your joints. So you still, of course, want to be doing it, but keep it low impact. If you're having joint pain, jumping around, bouncing all over the place is probably not going to be a great strategy for you right now. And then talking about the fascia. So this is kind of a netting that goes over your muscles. It's like a tissue. Think of it as a netting. But doing things like massage and foam rolling on the areas of your body that you're feeling knots or pain can actually help. This is on muscles. You don't want to foam roll or massage on joints, but that will help to release it. Finally, supplementation. So a high quality plant source essential fatty acid, or EFA, will help with joint pain, helps to lubricate, but also helps to build up the joints. There's other supplements as well, but that would be kind of my go-to. Joint pain, get on an EFA. I would say it needs to be plant sourced. Fish oil is contaminated with mercury, so we just don't want to be introducing that into our bodies as much as possible. So 2 specific things, again, within joint pain. If you have back pain, let's talk about back pain here. What I would recommend, these are things tomorrow, start doing. Focus on strengthening your legs and your core. A lot of times it's not the muscle, the actual weakness, your back isn't weak, it's your core, which counteracts your back, or your legs that can actually be a little bit weak. So strengthen those. And then massage and foam roll, like we just talked about, that fascia release. And then stretching, specifically your hip flexors. Hip flexors get really tight from sitting all day. So it could be driving, could be sitting at a desk, whatever you're doing. Hip flexors get shorter and they get kind of more tight. And then knee pain. So that was the other one. We talked about like menopausal knees, right? So stretch out those quads and calf muscles every day. Calf muscles are always overlooked, but it plays a huge role in knee pain. Massage and foam roll those areas. So again, your quads and your calves every day, and then strengthen your glutes. So we're kind of going about this in a holistic way where we're not focused only on the knee, right? Or your back. we're getting the areas that support it. Okay, make sense? Still with me? We're good. Okay, night sweats. So night sweats basically are hot flashes that wake you up at night. A lot of that is due to low estrogen. It could also be caused by imbalances in your gut or changes to your stress response system. So if you're feeling a lot of stress, or it feels like, oh, you're not handling the same stress, but you're not handling it the same physically, it might have some different reactions in your body. That can contribute to night sweats, which is very interesting. Changes in fluctuations in those hormone levels, that's why we get hot flashes. That's why we're getting those night sweats. And then imbalances in blood sugar regulation. Blood sugar is going to play such a huge role in balancing hormones. And we'll talk about that throughout these sections. But we really want steady blood sugar. We want rock solid blood sugar levels. So we don't want giant spikes. We don't want all these dips. We don't want, obviously, like when we eat, we do have those peaks and valleys, but we don't want it to be so substantial all the time. What that can lead to is adrenal fatigue and adrenal overwhelm. Stress also plays a huge role. Cortisol plays a huge role in adrenal fatigue. So when we are stressed, let me back up. When we wake up in the morning, our cortisol levels rise. Cortisol is kind of that hormone, or that stress hormone. Cortisol levels rise naturally. It's what helps to wake you up. And then at night, as soon as the sun starts to go down, your body receives those signals. That's why artificial light like this, like I have a super bright light on my face right now. It's not great. I won't be able to sleep very well tonight. But all this artificial light that is just part of our society, it produces, or it stops melatonin from naturally being produced when the sun goes down. So your cortisol levels are staying higher for longer. And then if you're on your phone in bed and have the TV going, if you're falling asleep with the TV on, melatonin, which makes you sleep, does not naturally get produced to the levels it should. So melatonin brings down cortisol levels at night. Cortisol levels bring down melatonin levels during the day. Does that kind of make sense? It's a circle. So as one's going down, the other should be going up, or vice versa. So night sweats kind of or adrenal fatigue rather, can throw this off, and it can actually result in some hot flashes and night sweats. So what do we do? Action plan for decreasing night sweats. First one, love on your gut. We need to get gut health in check if we want to regulate those hormones. Next up, change your food and drinks. So avoid low blood sugar. Like I said, we need rock solid blood sugar throughout the day. We want to avoid spicy foods, hot beverages, and alcohol. If you're commonly waking up between about 1 o'clock and 3 o'clock, that's the time that your liver really does some of its best work. And you're having a glass of alcohol, and maybe you're having some wine before bed to help you sleep, it's actually keeping you up. So we need to really, really reduce that. Doesn't mean 100%, doesn't mean a glass of wine every once in a while, will totally mess up your hormones. But if this is an issue, cut it out for a little bit and see how you feel. Another really effective method is called pace breathing. And this can actually help cool down a hot flash. And it could be a night sweat too. If you wake up in the middle of the night, you could do this. So inhale for 5 seconds and then exhale for 5 seconds. So usually our exhales are very short. Inhales are a little bit longer, but we want steady inhale and exhale. And you can do this for about 15 minutes or until you fall back asleep, right? If you're doing it kind of preventatively, you're going to want to do it for 15 minutes twice a day. Nice way to kind of wake up and chill out at the end of the day. The next step on your action plan is to chill out. Focus on repairing damage to those adrenal glands, which is caused a lot by stress. And then we get into supplements. So taking a daily multivitamin, again, you want to find high quality ones. You want to make sure you're getting what you pay for. and that your body can actually absorb it. A lot of synthetic supplements we can't absorb fully, so you're not getting all that it's saying that you are. So high quality one of that. And that's just going to help. I'm a big fan of multivitamins, but specific ones. Don't just take anything off the, drugstore or grocery store shelf. They probably are not going to be effective, but they help to cover a good one will help to cover your bases for that. And then additional supplements that can be really good for night sweats would be things like Vitex, that's chasteberry, valerian root, and black cohosh. And then any other specific supplements that would be appropriate for you. Okay, now weight gain. Let's get into this one. I know this one is always one that people have questions about. So specifically around the midsection, that's the name of tonight's webinar. Nicole suggested that when we were talking about doing this. So the menopausal middle, right? Low progesterone can produce weight gain in the form of water retention and constipation. So obviously, if you're not pooping and you're retaining water, you're going to weigh more, right? You're going to feel like you're taking on weight. Low estrogen specifically can cause weight gain. High estrogen in the form of water retention again. And then we have sleep issues. So these first three we talked about are the hormonal imbalances, right? But a lot of times, if we're gaining weight, we need to look at sleep. There's such a huge connection there. And that could be in the form of insomnia, night sweats, sleep apnea, adrenal fatigue, or blood sugar imbalances. So if you feel like you're gaining weight, especially around that midsection, look at your sleep. Do a really deep dive. Be honest with it. How's your sleep? Another one, like we just talked about before, blood sugar imbalances. We need rock solid blood sugar. We need to resolve any insulin resistance, any insulin issues that we're having. That will help with sleep, but really it helps with weight gain. Another issue to consider would be, do you have a chronic low-grade infection? So something like E. coli or H. pylori, very, very common, and they can be tough to get rid of, but they can cause weight gain, they can cause sleep issues, H. pylori is a big one. It's estimated that about 50% of the population has it, and they have no idea. A lot of people have no symptoms of it until they start actually looking at it. And then that leads to imbalances in the gut microbiome. So those two kind of go hand in hand. What to do about weight gain? Obviously, that action plan would be to decrease weight. So this is where functional lab testing can really come into play. There isn't one thing that I can say that will make midsection weight drop off, unfortunately, not in a healthy way. So functional lab testing, working with a practitioner to really determine what testing would be appropriate for you. So that could include things like hormone testing, thyroid testing, stool testing that will check for those chronic infections like H. pylori, blood sugar levels, and or inflammation levels. Improve sleep. We just talked a little bit about sleep. We want to resolve those sleep issues. That will help with maintaining weight. Next up, rethink your workouts. So we need to play this a little bit differently. What worked for you to lose weight in your 20s and 30s probably isn't going to be the same thing as 40s and 50s and above. And even, less of a gap than that. What worked last year might not work this year because your hormone levels are different, okay? So we need to listen to the body. But as we get older, we definitely need to increase strength training and decrease the cardio side of things, as well as decreasing that intensity. Working out at the intensity level you used to in your 20s and 30s, again, probably isn't going to be effective right now. One thing that's really interesting that I learned from working with our fitness coach, how we talked about, is if you're experiencing anxiety, doing HIIT workouts, so the high intensity interval training, can actually exacerbate that anxiety. So you're basically spiking that heart rate, right? And then you're bringing it down. then spiking it again. Your nervous system kind of goes crazy on it, which makes sense, right? Working out is amazing. You're putting good stress on your body, but sometimes it's not the right workout for you. We just have to find one that works out. Next up, poop regularly. We need to resolve constipation. I work with so many women who, once we get them pooping regularly, and it's amazing, they lose 10, 15 pounds just by doing that. It's absolutely amazing because all of that gets backed up. And if you're not getting waste out of your body, that's going to be a little bit of a problem. Okay, eat more fiber. Use the low and slow approach. So don't just all of a sudden start eating, all the kale in the world. You need to do it slowly. So identifying the root cause or the reason why your hormones are out of balance is the first step to feeling better. Anything else, it's just kind of slapping a Band-Aid on it, okay? If you don't know which hormones are off and why, it's going to be difficult to actually come to a resolution. You might find some results by trying, dietary and lifestyle things. I would definitely do that first. But to really, truly know what your hormones are doing, hormone testing is going to be the only way to do that. And based on what we just talked about, using that checklist, you have a pretty good idea of, it's probably low estrogen or probably high testosterone, whatever it might be for you. But that's a starting point, okay? So a hormone panel, this is really important. If you do run a functional lab test, a hormone panel is not going to tell you the root cause. It's going to tell you that something's up. Then we have to work to figure out what that root cause is if we want to resolve it. That brings us to the discussion on hormone replacement therapy. This is a controversial issue, although it really, really should not be. So HRT, hormone replacement therapy, testosterone replacement therapy, or TRT, is for men. Some women do benefit from HRT. There definitely is a application for it. They definitely can help some people. However, I do not think it should be a first line of defense, because a lot of times doctors are just, you're going in, you're talking about these symptoms, and they just, here you go. Here's your prescription for a random HRT, and they're not digging into it. It's not solving the root problem, okay? So what that HRT is doing is telling your body to stop producing these hormones. So you're going to be on it for the rest of your life. Let's kind of knock out the other things first. Let's try dietary and lifestyle things first. Let's try supplementation, things that are very low risk. And then generally the recommendation is about 6 months. If those things aren't doing anything for 6 months, then let's see what else we can do. Like, let's go one step deeper, okay? Hopefully that makes sense. Again, that's my opinion. I think doctors right now are doctors are only going to test you for things that they can prescribe you a pill for, unfortunately. Unless you have a good one out there are good ones. But in general, that's why your doctors are not usually going to offer a hormone test. They're going to say they don't work. They do work. Hormone testing absolutely is effective. They just don't know how to read it. Okay, so that's probably what's going on there. Okay, so now we just kind of talked about specifics for some of those issues and the symptoms that you're experiencing. But overall, what can help transition from menopause or from perimenopause to menopause and then beyond? So these are things, again, you can start doing these right away. Lifestyle, keep moving, aim for an hour, 4 times a week of cardio with 20 minutes of weight training each time. I wonder what that sounds like, right? That could be jazzercise, right? But keeping in mind kind of what we just talked about for your specific needs. Support your adrenals. Stress is often overlooked when it comes to menopause, but it puts a huge toll on those adrenal glands. And then massage. This might be a really good excuse to go get a massage fairly regularly. They have actual research on this. So 1 to 2 times a week for 4 to 8 weeks is helpful, even for people with severe symptoms. Check your insurance, because some insurance actually does cover this. Nutrition. We all can increase our fiber intake, but do it slowly. It's going to help support your gut health. And because your gut health or your gut is that gatekeeper to your hormones, it needs to be taken into consideration. This is why, as a health practitioner, I'm talking about hormones because the two go hand in hand. Eat your fruits and vegetables. That is the biggest way to keep inflammation at bay and oxidative stress. Your goal is 6 to 8 servings of fruits and vegetables a day, ideally more veggies than fruits. Omega-3s, we talked about that with essential fatty acids. That's going to help with brain, vascular, and joint health. Supplementation is a great way to do that. Flax seeds, 2 tablespoons daily. You want to grind it up. Keep it in the refrigerator. You can buy the whole seeds and then grind it up. 2 tablespoons a day. There's also some research out there suggesting that 2 tablespoons a day of flax seed can also help to prevent breast cancer. So this is not a, oh, it might help. They actually do have studies with it, and it actually does help with regulating hormone or estrogen, I should say, levels specifically. Next up, the mind-body connection. So reframing, we talked about that at the beginning. Your thoughts create your beliefs, and your beliefs create your actions. So if you need to, clean up those thoughts. We need to get in a really supportive, a really positive frame of mind. And then identifying those negative thought patterns. Your brain is innately negative. It's going to go to the negative, but it doesn't have to through some of this mindset training. And then finally, we have the gut hormone connection. We talked about that a little bit, but I would really challenge you, double down on your digestion. So good digestion often means good hormonal balance. Poor digestion, oh, that's a tough word for me to say tonight, often means hormonal imbalances. The two go hand in hand. And gut health, a gut imbalance can definitely be the root cause of a hormonal imbalance, and it often is. Blood sugar, check your blood sugar levels and then dig deeper. Additional testing can give you a more clear picture of what's going on. So just measuring your A1C is good, but it's a snapshot of what's happening. It's not gold standard, going to give you a whole lot of useful information. It's a great starting point, but then go a little bit deeper. That's why diabetes is really becoming an epidemic in this country, because we're not testing necessarily for the right things. And then, like I said, fix digestive issues. If you're not digesting your food, you're not getting the nutrients you need. Supplementation is even more important in that case. But if you're having an absorption issue, supplementation is not going to help it, because you have to fix the problem. Why are you not absorbing those nutrients? So again, as a reminder, hormonal imbalances are not the root cause. They're merely symptoms of something deeper going on, and are often symptoms of gut imbalance. Okay, those are all of my slides. Hopefully that all made sense. Sorry, I talked a little bit longer than I had anticipated, but your 2 freebies, again, you have that hormone checklist, and then I put that link in the chat. I'll do it again for a free consultation with me. And then if you would like to book that, you can do that. And I will give you, as a freebie for you guys, a 2-week customized meal plan, which is super, super cool, just for you. So we can talk about that on the call. But those are your 2 things you can definitely take advantage of. And then let me stop sharing that. Okay, cool. So that, if you have any questions, if you thought of anything, you can definitely pop it in there into the chat box. I did get my chat box back, which is great. I just have a couple questions that people submitted through that form that I'll go through. And then if anyone has anything else, you can definitely pop it in that chat. Like I said, if you want, you can unmute yourself as well. If you want to talk, that'd be cool too. Okay, so our first question, let me pull that up. So someone asked, I read about knowing your body type can lead to better results when trying to lose weight. How reliable is this? What are the body types? Okay, so unpopular opinion here. I don't like body type dieting. For the very simple reason of it makes everything so complicated. If we just go to the basics, if we go to diet and lifestyle factors, blood sugar regulation, if we do those things, you are going to see such a huge change if you really go all in on it and really focus on that gut health, and then even do some functional lab work to really figure out what's happening. You are going to see much better results than doing any sort of super fancy diet or fad diet. Could there be something to it? Maybe. If that's going to be what works for you, if that's going to be what gets you to commit and follow through and hold you accountable, go for it, right? But in general, I think that overcomplicates everything when we just need to get back to the basics. Most people are not doing basics 100%. Let's do that first because it's the most simple. I'm all about keeping things simple. So that is the unpopular opinion that I have on that matter. Okay. Next one, let me get to my question. I have tested on the low side of normal for FSH. What can I do to help regulate my hormones to be normal? So that's a great question. So that has a lot to do with kind of that ovulation, right? And ovulation is going to really, really be an indicator of overall health, because if you are not healthy in some way, chances are you're not ovulating. So whether or not you want to have a baby, no matter where you are, right? That is a very good indicator. So that hormone, that FSH hormone, is really, really, it peaks during ovulation. And so if you're on that lower side, I would definitely start doing all of those things that we just talked about. Really, we're starting with the basics. A big thing is going to be testing your insulin levels and reducing insulin resistance. So a lot of times what happens with that FSH is that your brain is thinking that there's too much estrogen. So it reduces that FSH production. So that causes those issues. So if your body thinks there's too much estrogen, it's going to do those things, do what it can to regulate that and kind of counteract that, if that makes sense. Big thing, avoid extreme dieting and extreme exercising. If there's any sort of like disordered eating during that time, that's when we want to work with someone to resolve that, because that can be common. Okay. Reducing stress is going to be a big one there too. Okay, and then the last question that I received, so again, pop a question in that chat if you have anything. The last one I have is, I have PCOS. What dietary changes can I make? So PCOS is really, really misunderstood by most doctors, and we're really starting to figure out that it's not necessarily a hormonal issue. It is a health issue that impacts hormones. So it's kind of lumped into like the gynecology world, but it just so happens to impact that world within you. So it's not strictly let's balance your hormones. Yes, that's going to help, but we do need to look elsewhere as well. So the biggest thing with that is stabilizing blood sugar. So you're going to want to really double down on that rock solid blood sugar that we have talked about. We do that mostly through that steady carbohydrate diet. So where we're not having giant spikes and giant dips. You want to be eating enough food. You want to make sure that you are eating clean. So getting rid of a lot of processed things, excess white sugar, gluten. Getting rid of gluten could be beneficial at this point. See how you feel. Let's see, reducing body fat. So there's a trend, people who have more body fat tend to be more insulin resistant or have issues with insulin. So if that's the case, looking at reducing some of that body fat. Just checking my notes. Inflammation is a huge piece too. So a lot of the things we're talking about tonight is going to be reducing inflammation. It's just a different approach to it. And then removing environmental toxins. So BPA, which is found in a lot of plastics, so squeezable, or not the squeezable, the hard plastic bottles, leaches into water, whatever's in there. So also in canned goods. So looking for canned beans that don't have that BPA lining in it, that's a huge endocrine disruptor, it's called. That plays a huge role with PCOS. Overall, really focusing on that blood sugar and gut health. Those are the two that are hands down the most important things there. Some kind of, while I was digging into this a little bit more, foods that kept popping up for PCOS include buckwheat, which is a gluten-free grain, despite having the word wheat in its name, flax seeds, 2 tablespoons a day again, sesame seeds, and then legumes. So kidney beans, chickpeas, things like that. Those are going to be really supportive for PCOS and specifically blood sugar regulation. But getting that kind of in there. PCOS is known to also affect that sex-binding hormone globulin. So testing that to see what that looks like. PCOS decreases that production and increases free testosterone. So we're wanting to measure those things, but also thyroid function. So if you're going to do some testing with PCOS, I would go that route, the sex hormone binding globulin and then thyroid function as well. It's complicated. It's a complicated diagnosis if you've actually been diagnosed with it, but it's very comforting to know that there are many, many people out there that have reversed it through diet and lifestyle, and mostly blood sugar regulation and gut health. So hopefully that answers the question. Question from the chat. How do you know if your gut is not absorbing nutrients? Oh, that's a great question. So that's where working. So when someone comes to me, I have them do a food journal. So they're writing down what they're eating, but then we're also wanting to look at lab work. So for example, if you are taking a vitamin D supplement and they run a test, we test your vitamin D levels and it's still super low, it could be an indicator either you need a different type of vitamin D, one that's more readily available, you need a higher dose, or your body's just not absorbing it. And that can be the case with any of these nutrients. So if you are taking nutrients like supplements, or if you're eating a lot of foods with specific nutrients in there, and blood testing comes back saying you're low in it, that is the indication that you are not absorbing that food, that nutrient. So hopefully that makes sense. There are things like celiac disease is notorious. People with celiac disease have a very tough time absorbing nutrients. People with substantial gut issues, so imbalances in that gut microbiome, have a really tough time absorbing nutrients because that lining of the gut has been damaged. So hopefully that answers your question a little bit. It's not as clear cut as just kind of, I don't know what a clear answer would be on that, but using the two. So that's where just looking at blood testing is not going to give you an answer. Just looking at a food journal is not going to give you an answer. The two together give you that answer. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, any other questions? Anything else you guys are wondering or want to talk about? Go ahead and unmute if you want to. I want to say hi or whatever. Whatever you want to do. Let me pop those links back in. Okay, good. Hopefully that, yeah. Yeah, nutrient absorption is such a huge topic because if you are if you're taking supplements and you're not absorbing them, you are literally paying for very expensive urine, right? It's going right out of you. So we don't want that. We want your body to be using it. It will get rid of the excess, but we want it to know for sure. And that's where testing can come in. Okay. That's all I have, you guys. So take advantage of those freebies I'm offering. I'd love to chat more with you. Please reach out, email, social media at Phobal Makers. I'm on all the social medias. If you have questions, I'd love to talk to you more about this. I know this is super complicated, but we can dig deep, or if it's just a simple question, I'd love to answer that. So I know this is can be a tough time. So I'd love to help you on this. Okay. So that is all I have. All, all I have for you. Thanks, Lene, Christy. Thank you. It's good seeing you guys, and I hope you have a wonderful evening. Let me know if I can help in any way. All right. Bye, guys.